Tom, I want to start with what we started the show off with. Ohio State at 5, I agree with. I think all of us on this show agree with it. Don't know where you stand. But Tennessee in front of Alabama, if you're going by what the committee says they go by, it's kind of like on the Ringer, why you talk different you did before.
You mean Alabama in front of Tennessee?
Yes, Alabama in front of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yes.
All that did, we got into a huge deal on this on my Sunday show with Barrett Sallee about, because we had people coming in on Twitter and saying, oh, well, there's criteria that the committee has to adhere to. And I pushed back immediately. I said, no, they have one mandate, and it's to take the top 4 teams. All of that other stuff is suggestions. They're not required to adhere to any of it. Not strength of schedule, not strength of record, not head-to-head, not common opponents, not top 25 wins. Oh, by the way, Tennessee is greater than Alabama in every one of those things that I just mentioned.
Yep.
So essentially what the committee did is that they just proved once again that if they truly believe a team would be better in that college football playoff setting and have more success, okay, and the Hendon-Hooker injury may have something to do with this, they're going to take all of those debatable ideas and throw them out the window, and they're going to put the team they think would survive the best in the college football playoff. And they just proved it, and they've been proving it. And I continually push. Everybody wants to talk about what they should be going by. It doesn't matter. They're not required to until Bill Hancock and that committee says, hey, listen, if we get in this room and we have to figure out who's going above who, and we have to have a deciding factor, you must use this set of criteria. They do not do that.
Why do we not do that? Why do we not do that, though? Like, that makes no sense. That'd be like me handing out a test and saying there's no right answer. It's just how I feel about it. There's no rubric. Like, again, the way college basketball does it, you do have RPI. You have SOS. You have number. I need numbers next to criteria. That's what I need when it comes. I need to know the value of each team, how you got to that value. And that's not to say, Tom, that there can't be any nuance or gray area there. But to me, how can you come up with a system where there's no numeric value to some? Because it's basically eye test and brand. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
That's what gives them the out every time. They don't want to have to adhere to things to be mandated. They want to float, as you put it, in the gray area. And let's be honest with you guys. If you sat here, I'll ask the 3 of you. If you had to put Alabama or Tennessee in the college football right now, college football playoff right now, who would survive a semifinal game?
I think Alabama would have a much better chance because Hendon-Hooker's hurt.
And so does the committee. And so does the committee. And if the committee would just come out and say what you just said, people wouldn't have a problem with it.
Well, does
People
that?
would be like,
well,
okay,
the
I get it.
Yeah. Well, again, Tom, the question is, there's 2 separate avenues here. All right, and they can both coexist at the same time. There's the 4 best teams that are playing right now. All right, the 4 best teams. Because right now, if Kansas State beats TCU, who's to say Kansas State's not playing as good as anybody in the country right now? Who's to say that Kansas State shouldn't be one of those 4 teams in? But if we're going to say, all right, these are the 4 teams that would do the best in the playoff, or these are the 4 teams that deserve to be in the playoff, those are 2 different things. And until you have some sort of thing to cement that, or some sort of numeric value to give some type of light in that, we're going to keep having this debate. Now, the 12-team playoff will fix a lot of it. You'll have people that cry about the 13th that are in 13th or in 14th.
Of course.
But we know typically there's not more than 5 teams that can win the national championship anyway. So that should diffuse it a little bit. I just don't like that we're just letting it breathe in the wind. I don't like that.
Well, let me add to this, because this is what could happen off of this weekend. I don't think it will, but it could. If TCU loses, okay, I think they should still be in the college football playoff.
I think they should too.
Because their body of work overall, the amount of ranked teams that they've beat, how they've won, the fact that they were playing on a weekend where Ohio State is not playing, okay, Alabama is not playing, Tennessee is not playing. You can't punish them for that extra data point. If they would have gone in, let's just put it this way. Let's just say that they're the number 4 or 5 team and they have 1 loss right now. That's just the way the college football season had gone, and their 1 loss happened in week 5. Okay, they go on and they win the Big 12. All right, then they're going to be in the top 4 with the exact same record that they would have if they lose this weekend. So I think TCU should still be in. It'll be interesting to see what the committee does if they lose.
Yeah, well, it could be made a lot easier if USC and TCU lose, or USC loses.
Yeah.
That's easy to swap Ohio State in there. Well, last question for you before I go over to Cone. Which one of the top four, which is most likely to lose a conference championship game this weekend, in your opinion?
Oh, man, that's a really, really good one. I probably would say TCU because I think they're just the most evenly matched, right? I think Georgia overmatches LSU. I think Michigan overmatches Purdue. I would probably say that the game that's most equitable across the board in many areas is TCU and K-State. But I'm also one of those people that truly believes that sometimes there are those seasons where everything just aligns and it's going to happen for you. Auburn 2010 was one of those years. We've seen it happen with Ohio State in 2014, where all of the things that have to happen at the time they have to happen do. And when they do, the thing becomes magical. And if you could bottle it and sell it, you'd be a gazillionaire, but nobody knows how to replicate it. It just happens. And that's TCU this year.
It's like they say, it's always amazing when a plan works out perfectly.
Yeah, no doubt. No, and I agree with you on TCU. You know, if TCU loses this weekend, I think they still have a great argument to make, especially when they're playing Kansas State for the second time. Let's talk about the Buckeyes. Let's talk about the Buckeyes for 1 second, because we were talking about margin of defeat and margin of victory a little bit earlier in the show. You know, if the Buckeyes lose that game this past weekend to Michigan by 1 point, similar to Alabama, LSU, if Michigan goes for 2 at the end of that game, does that change your opinion? I mean, would you feel like then if TCU loses a game that the Buckeyes should be in? Or let's even talk about OSU against, say, a potentially 2-loss Southern Cal team if they lose twice to Utah. Does the margin of defeat change in your mind there, Tom?
It would more so for the Ohio State Michigan debate because of just how that game looked optically, how it played out. The big plays that just marred the entire contest and made Ohio State look like they were outcoached, outperformed, and it happened at home. If that would have been a back and forth, limited explosive plays, tit for tat, next thing you know, it comes down one team made one little mistake in the middle of the fourth quarter, and it led to a field goal that ended up being a 3-point Michigan win. I think that's a little bit of a different discussion. But with SC and Utah, number one, I think we all agree it's hard to beat a team twice, especially a good team, right? So Utah's got their hands full with SC. SC's hot. They're pressing all the right buttons. As long as number 13 gets off the bus, SC's going to have a chance because he completely compensates for what they lack in a lot of other areas, particularly on the defensive side of the football. I don't think SC can lose and have a shot in any way, shape, or form, especially if they lost twice to the same team. That's not happening, in my opinion.
My second question is a debate we were having yesterday as it relates to 1 loss versus 2 losses. How do you compare one, say, quote-unquote bad loss, either to a bad team or, like you were saying about the Buckeyes, you lose in a bad fashion to a good team, but it's 1 loss, versus 2 losses, okay, like Alabama has, that may be against good teams and may be close on the road, like Alabama's both losses close on to road teams?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I hate getting into this discussion because 2 losses is always worse than 1. I don't care how they happen, right?
Sure.
I mean, the bottom line is, and in the case of Alabama, I think the one thing that we have to acknowledge, and it's hard for Alabama fans to do this, a lot of the reason both of those losses occurred were self-inflicted wounds. Like Alabama didn't play good. Alabama had 18 penalties against Tennessee. 18. All right. So listen, if you're going to lose a game in this and that, lose it in clean fashion if you want to get some respectability and be in the debate as a 2-loss team versus a 1-loss team that didn't play in their conference championship. But I try to streamline that into 2 is more than 1. 3 is more than 2. I mean, how they happened, I get we can go back and forth, but to our very first discussion on this program, guys, you know, people are trying to debate that right now with Tennessee and with Alabama, and I know it's the same level of losses, but you want to sit there and point at the South Carolina game? Well, South Carolina the last 2 weeks isn't the South Carolina that they were when they lost to Florida, right? I mean, Everybody's different on every week, and it can happen to anybody. And it happened to Tennessee, and it happened in bad fashion. But all that other criteria we discussed with the college football playoff, Tennessee still owns the debate versus Alabama.
Well, again, head-to-head should be – you can give me all you want. I had Alabama fans on the timeline yesterday saying, well, South Carolina beat them 63-38. I was like, well, they beat you. They beat y'all. That team that lost that game beat you. And discussion's over. I'm sorry.
And in all fairness to the most of the Alabama fans I've been talking to, they've been agreeing.
Yes.
They said, look, we have not played that well this year. We don't deserve to be in it. That's a small anecdotal sample size.
It's Hendon Hooker. That's why they're ranked. It's Hendon Hooker.
That's exactly what it is.
That's why. That's why Bama's in front of them.
And that's why eye test and who they actually think would win a semifinal game comes into play in this.
God, everything's just up to interpretation these days. Yes. I mean, Jay could be a chick. I mean, David, you could be
watch your mouth.
A redwood. You know, you deserve.
David is a redwood.
Redwood.
He identifies as a redwood. Luke's, I'm going to Travis Elrod. We're going to hop in the Booster Club right here. He wants to know: has Lincoln Riley just recreated the same situation he had in Oklahoma? All right, great offense, have a good season, make the playoffs, and get absolutely destroyed.
Bingo. and it's not so much that he created, he semi-inherited it, right? Because he created it on the offensive side with the transfer portal, inherited what is arguably one of the worst defenses he would have had, including some of those Oklahoma defenses. Listen, there's Kalen Brooks, and there's Tui Tuipulotu, and that's about the only two names on the USC's defense, I can't believe I'm saying this, that has NFL written on them. Two guys. We're talking about SC, right? Yeah. And that offense and the fact, and here's the other thing too, is people have pushed back on me about SC being critical of their defense. Well, they forced all these turnovers. Not all turnovers are created equal. They didn't force the Oregon State turnovers. Oregon State threw the ball right to them. They didn't force the Stanford turnovers. How about the fumble by Drew Pine the other day? Just drops the ball on the carpet, drops it, literally just drops it on the ground. That wasn't forced. That wasn't a hat on the ball or coming and swiping through. So, yes, they get credit for some of that, but you take 13 off of that team, and let's just say you take away half of the turnovers. Take away the ones that weren't forced, all right? That team is 6-6. So to answer the Booster Club question, I absolutely think that's where they are. The difference, though, between the job he's in now and the job he's at Oklahoma, he has much better access to elite defensive personnel if he chooses to really target it. Than he did when he was
That's why. That's the main reason I'm telling you guys. I think that's the main reason he took the job. I think that's the main reason he took the job at USC. I think he's like, listen, I can go out here and build a mega offense with these guys, and I can let the defensive players just come to me. Not that Oklahoma wasn't recruiting well, and I do realize, who they had there on staff and everything like that with Grinch. Grinch does a good job. But let's not for 1 second pretend like it's easier to get good defensive players at Oklahoma than it is at USC. Sure. It'll never be like that. It's just, it's the way. That's why it's hard to get good recruits at Nebraska. I think it's amazing what Oklahoma's been able to do over there. It's tough to get recruits to go out to those places in the middle of the country. Not saying they're not good towns or not good teams or anything like that, but it is hard. A kid would much rather go out to L.A. and play for USC or stay home in L.A. and play for USC than go to Norman, Oklahoma. Just is what it is.
Well, Tom, hey, Auburn Tigers hired Hugh Freeze. What's your thoughts on that? Good hire?
Well, you didn't have plan A. He was plan B, and there was no plan C. I mean, the bottom line, that's really, if you want to simplify it, that's exactly how this thing came to pass. And I got to be honest with you guys, it's very easy to criticize, Hugh Freeze, and he's brought an awful lot of it on to himself. And I know he's kind of been in image rehab during his time at Liberty, and he won some games. I thought the performance of him as a coach, his staff, and his players the last 3 weeks was downright despicable. I mean, I'm not so sure he earned the Auburn job the last 3 weeks, particularly this last weekend against New Mexico State. I mean, for crying out loud, that team basically quit on him. And that's not good, But I'll say this. He's getting this job at the right time, because what was once either against the rules, frowned upon, illegal, is now not, right? And so you just got hired by a program that has Alabama living in your head rent-free, and you so desperately want to have somebody that could come in there and have a chance to beat Nick Saban. There's 2 people on the planet in the SEC or have done it. Well, really 3 if you count Dabo, but Gus Malzahn and now Hugh Freeze. But he's got a 19-21 SEC record during his time at Ole Miss. Obviously, he's got vacated wins as well. There's baggage there. We all know that. Clearly, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, if you win, nobody will care.
Yeah.
Nobody will care, guys. That's the thing in all of this. Winning cures all woes. So if he goes in there, he's going to have an unbelievable $13 million plus Auburn collective for name, image, and likeness. They just finished a state-of-the-art football operations center that was about 25 years overdue. The timing of all of this could not be better. He knows how to recruit. He knows how to identify. He knows how to deal with kids and to relate. And now he has a bunch of weapons in his arsenal that he can legally use, right?
Yeah.
Until Congress or the state or the federal government decide to come down and say, oh, we're going to start policing this stuff, then it's a free-for-all, guys. And not all, Lane Kiffin said it this summer, not all programs are created equal, right? I mean, we may have a certain set of this to get this done, but we don't have Alabama stuff. We don't have A&M stuff. Not everybody is set up that way. Auburn is set up that way. So the timing of all of this may work out really, really well.
No, without a doubt. But before you go, Tom, I want to ask you this real quick. I know we just signed that extension with Ole Miss, but with the way it went down, the way Lane Kiffin treated Ole Miss in this whole process, then got beat at home against a Mississippi State team that you felt like he should have beat. If they play bad next year, is there a chance he gets fired?
It would have to be really bad, I think. I think they would have to really regress. I think they need to be as competitive as they were this year, if not better. And to be honest with you, you're going to have to win another game that people don't expect you to win, right? That's you got to keep kind of stacking those, because when you got to win the ones you're supposed to, but if you get one that maybe you were an underdog in, or you get one that they didn't expect you to win, that kind of builds some equity for you. And I think he definitely needs to do that. And to be honest with you, with Hugh Freeze at Auburn, I mean, you think that they're going to give him a long leash on this? I mean, he better win, and he better win fast. And we're in a world right now where he can. He could go out in the next 3 weeks and completely transform the roster with 30 different players.
Yep.
If they really worked at it. All right. So bottom line is, it can be done now that way.
Definitely. Tom, well, I appreciate you, brother. It's been great to have you on all season. Excited to bring you back next week after we know who the 4 will be in the playoff. If it's chalk this weekend, we're already going to, but it's always fun, my friend.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
All right, brother. You too. Tom. Hey, YouTube, what's up? Do me one favor. Go down, hit that subscribe button. And you know what? Turn on that notification bell as well. Start ringing that thing like Quasimodo, except you're better looking.